How many dams does China have? Chinese official data from 2020 reported a total of 98,566 dams nationwide. But just 5 years later, at this year's two sessions, China's Minister of Water Resources casually stated that the number had dropped to 94,877, meaning that 3,698 dams disappeared in 5 years. This isn't a recent phenomenon. Back in 1973, China had even more, around 170,000 reservoirs. Yet the fate of these dams remains unclear. There are no public explanations for why or how these dams disappeared, whether through collapse, dismantlement, or disrepair. The system itself seems to have accepted this loss. Ironically, in August 2024, China's State Council relayed instructions from Xi Jinping stating that China's reservoirs were too many, with many high-risk dams. This marked the first public admission by China's top leadership that the dam system posed a national security risk. These statements shone a spotlight into a long-hidden issue. Dams hadn't simply vanished. They had either collapsed or were deliberately emptied to prevent imminent failure. The remaining dams likely face the same fate, something the Chinese Communist Party is reluctant to openly admit. So the floods that suddenly appear are not merely natural disasters. They result from systemic human failures, layers of lies, bureaucratic avoidance, and deliberate concealment by authorities. Many existing dams, classified as dangerous or high risk, could fail under pressure at any moment, and communities downstream might not even receive warnings. Recent incidents highlight this risk. On April 19th, just after midnight, an unexpected flood swept through Laba town in Zunyi City, Guizhou province. Streets became rivers, houses floated away, and cars were carried off. Residents woke up in the middle of the night and fled barefoot through waist-deep water. There had been no heavy rainfall, and no emergency alerts were sent to residents' phones. The truth only surfaced through a leaked video posted on social media. It showed a nearby reservoir silently releasing water. To date, no official explanation or acknowledgement has been provided. This was the first publicly reported, unannounced dam release incident in China this year. One social media comment summarized the situation clearly. If they don't release water, the fragile dams collapse. If they do, ordinary people pay the price. This isn't flood control, it's shifting responsibility. Another said, these dams aren't built for disaster prevention. They exist for generating profits, eventually becoming deadly tools, like a sickle and hammer falling from the sky. Going back 1 year earlier, on July 1, 2024, Pingjiang County in Hunan Province faced a historically severe flood. All 190 reservoirs in the county released water simultaneously without prior warning, turning the county into a flooded disaster zone overnight. This was the timeline. At 9:40 a.m., Huangjingdong Reservoir begins releasing water. By noon, floodwaters reached Changshu Street. Between 2 and 3 p.m., the entire county was flooded. No warnings were issued, no evacuation orders given, not even a simple alert. A local TV station broadcast, "Reported from our station, we have been flooded." This has become the most iconic footnote about the disaster. About 76,000 residents had to be urgently relocated, with a total of 436,000 people were affected. Economic losses exceeded 2.5 billion yuan, equivalent to 2 years of the county's tax revenue. The death toll has never been officially disclosed. Online posts about missing people have all been deleted, and the grieving families' cries disappeared into an algorithmic black hole of censorship. Another disaster occurred on July 16th and 17th of last year. Baoji City in Shanxi Province was hit by heavy rains, causing water levels in the Qian River to surge. Multiple reservoirs, including Fengjiashan and Wangjiaya, began releasing water without warning. Fengjiashan Reservoir, the fourth largest reservoir in Shanxi, was designed to handle once-in-a-century floods. Yet this dam, built in 1982, was classified as dangerously unstable as early as 2003. Its release caused bridges and roads to collapse, halted railway services, took away 5 people's lives, and left 8 missing. Ironically, after the incident, Chinese authorities announced a sediment removal and reservoir restoration project. It cost 965 million yuan, more than the dam's original construction cost. Local residents received no warnings and only learned after the water receded that these flood control reservoirs had been the very source of their disaster. These incidents are not isolated, but reflect long-standing systemic problems in China's dam management. Public records indicate that from 1954 to 2021, China experienced 3,558 dam failures, an average of 52.3 per year. corresponding to an annual dam failure rate of 0.053%, significantly higher than the internationally acceptable rate of 0.01%. Two of the most devastating failures stand out starkly. In August 1975, 62 reservoirs collapsed in the Banqiao area of Henan province, resulting in over 240,000 deaths and displaced approximately 11 million people. The U.S. Discovery Channel later described this disaster as the largest human-made disaster caused by technical failure in human history. Between August 5th and 8th, 1975, unexpected rains overwhelmed the Banqiao Dam's design limits. Dam officials repeatedly reported critical water levels, requesting permission to release floodwaters, but the orders never came. On August 8th in the early morning, catastrophe struck. The Banqiao Dam collapsed, triggering a domino effect of failures in 61 other dams and floodgates. A giant wall of water, 16 meters high and 12 kilometers wide, swept downstream at 50 kilometers per hour. Within hours, floods destroyed 1,126 villages across 9 counties, 29 communes, and 302 production brigades. In the worst-hit areas, floodwaters exceeded 10 meters, obliterating homes and infrastructure. Communication in the region was only restored by August 20th. The most heartbreaking part of all this is that it could have been avoided if the floodgate orders had been issued earlier, if the warning systems had worked properly, or if there had been reasonable emergency plans in place. But none of that happened. What was left behind were the lives of 240,000 people, and one of the most tragic chapters in China's water management history. What's even more troubling is that this disaster was completely covered up for a long time. It wasn't until 1995 that the government publicly acknowledged the disaster, admitting that 11 million people were affected and 26,000 had died, but many researchers believe the actual death toll was over 240,000. In 1963, the Hai River Basin saw a chain reaction of 319 dam failures, one of the most severe water-related disasters in China's history. The true death toll from this event has never been revealed by the Chinese government. The direct cause of this disaster was unrealistic targets and poor management, leading to engineering issues. During the late Great Leap Forward period, the government pushed for rapid dam construction as part of political campaigns. Many of these reservoirs were hastily built without proper geological surveys, using rough designs and poor construction quality. Experts believe that these Great Leap Forward dams had safety risks built into their design from the start. Yet, after such large-scale dam failures, the government did not carry out thorough reforms. Instead, they simply labeled the cause as a natural disaster. Even more alarming is that in 1973, a record 570 dams failed, nearly 10 times the annual average. Oddly, all other years had exceptionally stable data, as if 1973 was an anomaly, when dam failures suddenly surged. This irregularity raises suspicions. Could 1973's dam failure rate be the real normal for China's reservoirs, while the figures for other years might have all been hidden? If this is true, the recent 5-year trend of losing over 700 dams each year is not so surprising. The dam collapsed in silence, with no reports and no acknowledgement. Traditional Chinese thought did not favor dam construction. In 1950, the International Commission on Large Dams recorded only 22 dams in China, out of 5,268 worldwide. Most of them were built during Japan's occupation of northeast China. China's tradition focused on diverting water to control it, never relying solely on blocking water. They knew that once a dam collapses, it could harm the people. This wisdom should have been a cornerstone of today's water management practices in China, but the reality is the opposite. Since the CCP took over, China has seen several waves of nationwide dam construction. In 1950, there were just 22 reservoirs. By the end of 1973, the number had grown to 170,000, with a total capacity of 460 billion cubic meters. By 2020, the total storage capacity increased by another 470 billion cubic meters, bringing China's total reservoir capacity to 930.6 billion cubic meters. With 2,844 county-level administrative units, this means an average of over 300 million cubic meters of water for each county. How many of China's reservoirs are unsafe, aging, or at risk? According to Chinese official data, more than 87% of reservoirs were built before 1979, with nearly half constructed before 1969, meaning many have been in operation for over half a century. These dams are all aging, leaking, and deformed. They cannot be repaired due to a lack of funding, and authorities are reluctant to scrap them because of political concerns. As a result, many dams that can't be declared broken and can't be used remain quietly in China's valleys and upstream cities, waiting for the next flood. Even more troubling is that these high-risk dams are widespread in seismic zones, such as Sichuan, Yunnan, Tibet, and Xinjiang. Statistics indicate that 6 of the top 10 highest dams in the world are in China. In 2025, the Dadu River Shuangjiangkou Reservoir stored water successfully, standing at a height of 314 meters, making it the tallest dam in the world. Located in a seismic zone, it's like a ticking time bomb. Despite this, the CCP continues to push forward the construction of highlands prone to landslides and mudslides. The Changhe Dam project needed constant reinforcement shortly after it was put into operation. The Dagangshan hydropower station's number 3 unit suffered a serious breakdown in March 2025, requiring major repairs. These projects are plagued by problems even before they're finished. These dams are like ticking time bombs spread across China's landscape. If they fail, the consequences would be disastrous. Since 2020, China's water infrastructure spending has hit new records each year. In 2020, investment reached 770 billion yuan. In 2021, it stood at 757.6 billion yuan. In 2022, the spending topped 1 trillion yuan. In 2023, it climbed to 1.2 trillion yuan. And in 2024, spending rose again to 1.35 trillion yuan. In total, nearly 6 trillion yuan has been invested over 5 years. But despite more investment, losses from flooding were even greater. In 2023, the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei flood caused $239.3 billion in direct losses. In 2024, flooding nationwide caused 263 billion yuan in damages, far surpassing the 1998 Yangtze River flood, which caused 166.6 billion yuan in damages. Beneath this investment boom lies a shocking level of corruption. An internal audit report in 2023 revealed that nearly 24% of funds for national water projects were lost, far higher than in other infrastructure sectors. In January 2024, the former head of Hunan's Water Resources Department, Yan Xuemao, was sentenced to death with a 2-year reprieve for taking 320 million yuan in bribes. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Water infrastructure projects are particularly vulnerable to corruption, as underground foundations are hard to inspect, concrete quality is difficult to test, and procurement materials are easily manipulated. What's even more alarming is the high investment, low maintenance trap. New reservoir projects are well funded, but maintenance funding is severely lacking. Statistics show that there's a funding shortfall of over 2 trillion yuan for reservoir maintenance nationwide. This explains why so many reservoirs are in poor condition. New projects have political value and publicity benefits, but no one cares about maintaining older ones, and there's no budget for that. That's why China has so many aging, dangerous reservoirs. Each year they're reported as needing repairs, but there's no money to fix them. In fact, fewer than half of China's 93,000 reservoirs are in usable condition and able to manage floodwaters safely. Many others are either silted up, structurally dangerous, or simply too dry to use, but they're not officially decommissioned. In a county in Sichuan, 23 small reservoirs were found, but only 9 were still operating normally. The others had serious sediment buildup, reducing their storage capacity to 30% of design specs. They had severe leakage issues, or were destroyed by nearby mining activities. However, these reservoirs were still listed as operating normally. Decommissioning a reservoir means taking responsibility and cutting staff, and no one is willing to do that, so they just keep running them on paper. Investigators say reservoirs have vanished without notice in 5 days. Some sites become industrial parks, but stay listed as operational. Others dry out completely, kept pumped only to pass inspections. Some dams are repurposed as walls for new housing developments. A few are converted into tourist attractions and lose all flood control function. And many are simply wiped from official records, disappearing without any formal decommissioning. These ghost reservoirs consume budgets and inflate GDP artificially, but they serve no practical flood control purpose. Ironically, it's not just money being wasted. China's entire approach is completely misguided. Instead of reflecting on past disasters, the Ministry of Water Resources published a political textbook titled In-Depth Study of Xi Jinping's Most Important Discourses on Water Management. The book's first pages boldly declares learning the General Secretary's water management discourse is an important political task for the present and the future. However, there's no actionable technical plan in the book, no accountability measures, and no improvements in disaster relief protocols. The water management book avoids all real disaster sites, ignoring all of the lives that were lost. In February 2025, the Politburo of the CCP held a collective study meeting on water management. Xi Jinping emphasized the need to ensure the safety of reservoirs, but no specific measures were announced. Ironically, the very next day, a reservoir in Shanxi province urgently released water due to dam cracks, flooding 2 towns downstream. The news was tightly controlled and not reported by the government. The stories of Pingjiang's 190 reservoirs releasing water without warning, the town of Laba submerged overnight, Jiashan Reservoir's muddy cleanup never completed, none of these real-life disasters made it into the political textbook. In China, when a flood comes, the first question isn't about the weather, the warnings, or evacuation. It's, has the General Secretary spoken? The first responders in disaster zones aren't rescue teams, they're cameras and propaganda teams. This is not just a reservoir crisis, it's a systemic failure. On the surface, China's water reservoir problems seem to be caused by aging dams and failing warning systems, but at the core, the issue lies in a dysfunctional system that refuses to speak the truth, avoids admitting mistakes, and fails to make necessary changes. Even when an entire city is cut off, the government and media continue to maintain the facade that everything is under control. After countless failures, 7 key lessons keep coming up: improving design, strengthening supervision, reassigning responsibility, advancing technology, establishing early warnings, enforcing maintenance, and ensuring transparency. Although these same principles have been repeated in government directives for years, the failures keep going on year after year. When disaster strikes, for the CCP, responsibility is never traced upward, but flows downward. Low-level workers, duty officers, and even innocent citizens are pushed into the spotlight to take blame for those who made the final decisions. The real questions that should have been asked are: who approved the construction of this dam? Who signed off on this levy? Who authorized the opening of the floodgates under the no evacuation order? Who chose to remain silent and report only the positive signs, while ignoring all the warnings? Put simply, China has too many dams, and they were constructed in a rushed, sloppy, and dangerous manner. To make things worse, they're built next to people's homes, under a system where no one is held accountable. Under the current system, the Chinese public can only hope that the next flood will allow people enough time to climb onto rooftops, pull out their phones, and leave that one message that will surely be deleted. Reported from our station, we have been flooded.